we interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody, my name is Kevin.
And my name's John.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. On today's episode, we're taking a look at Superman. Superman must reconcile his alien Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing as reporter Clark Kent. As this embodiment of truth, justice, and the human way, he soon finds himself in a world that views these as old-fashioned. Okay, John, it's been a long time coming, I think. We've been through quite a few different DC projects, I'll say. Some more successful than others, most not very successful. But James Gunn kind of was like the last usherance of potential success for this, DC in general. I don't know how about you felt about it, but I really enjoyed his Suicide Squad movie that came out.
I enjoyed it as well, yep.
And I get it. We're going to talk about James Gunn as a director, I think, at some point during this review. But with what he did with the Suicide Squad, I felt like he got it. It wasn't kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy rated R. Sure, we can make that argument, absolutely. But it was a good... he was in a good place. I think he understood the ideology behind what the comic book movie should be, right? I definitely got a feeling for that. So
I think what was interesting to me, because I did like Guardians of the Galaxy, I did like Suicide Squad. Both, though, are kind of joke, character, kind of side story people. And I was not apprehensive, but I was interested to see how he would take who's probably the most like straight up normal, boring superhero.
Well, that's the $100 question, I guess.
Yeah.
$1 billion question if you're looking at Warner Brothers here, hoping that's what it ends up being. What were they going to do with Superman? Superman's been, in my opinion, and I don't want to get too crazy with this, I personally didn't enjoy Man of Steel that much. Going back, I didn't like the, don't save everybody, leave them alone. And, basically how we got to this point, I didn't know what they were going to do, right? We were so dark at one point, and now we're here. And I got to tell you, man, after watching this movie, I think it's up there as one of my favorite comic book movies, at least the more recent time, since maybe Guardians of the Galaxy. I think this is definitely one of my most favorite comic book movies. It captured the tone, the character, everything I wanted in a Superman movie. Is everyone going to like this? Probably not, and I think there's some reasons and some legitimacy to maybe why they wouldn't, but if you could just turn your brain off and watch this movie, in my opinion, this is one of the perfect Superman movies that could have been made since probably the original, honestly.
Yep, and I think there's definitely that James Gunn vibe, right? There's definitely some jokes. There's an action scene that is very reminiscent of action scenes in Guardians of the Galaxy that I actually really enjoyed, even though as soon as it started, I thought, more Guardians of the Galaxy, I guess.
Right.
But I think that overall the film was extremely true to the character of Superman, who just wants to do what's right. And that's it. They didn't really deviate from what makes Superman Superman, which is, I'm going to do the right thing, right? And that is kind of the focus of the movie. How do you know what the right thing is? And what are the ramifications for acting on what you think is doing the right thing when people disagree?
Right. And I think, in my opinion, even as far as comic book writing goes, not even just movie writing, Superman is the hardest character to write for in media. I mean, he's perfect. Pretty much. He's indestructible for the most part, minus a little glowing green rock that can kind of take him out and some other crazy magic shenanigans that happen. Other than that, he's the Boy Scout. What do you do with him? Lately, I think we've seen a trend where everyone just decides to make Superman evil in most media.
Right.
Video games have adapted that with the Injustice series. That was a popular decision. And we started seeing that in comics, Red Sun and stuff like that, if you're familiar with those. I feel like writers don't know what to do with Superman. So what do? You make him a villain. And I feel like James Gunn understood what the golden age Superman really was. Like that special era of Superman, like you said, just being the Boy Scout, being the genuine good guy. Does he have his flaws? Yeah. Is this a character study piece of his intellect and his emotional spectrum? A little bit, but not too deep for you to get lost in it. Again, I think it's just having fun being a Superman movie. All the characters fit. I love the casting. I think, honestly, he might be I'm gonna make sure I get his name right. David Cornsweet, I think.
Yep.
Cornsweet. Yep, got it right. See, got it. Yeah. For all you out there, I got it. David Cornsweet. He did a really great job. He looks like Superman. In my opinion, he looks like the embodiment of comic book Superman. Friendly, happy, ready to save the day. And James Gunn knew what he was doing with the script, and he made sure to make focuses on Superman just doing good things throughout the movie, and that's kind of what I wanted out of Superman, you know?
And not just big good things, but little good things, like saving a squirrel in the middle of an action scene, right? It's funny, but it's true to the character. And I think, like you're saying, what do you do with the strongest, fastest, best guy? I liked that the majority of the conflict, there were fights and they were cool,
right?
But the majority was challenging his ideals and not challenging his powers.
Because you can't physically hurt him, so how do you hurt Superman? And ultimately, it's via emotional. You emotionally damage the guy until he can't do anything. And I think that's where Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor comes in, which I think people are going to be divided by this character, right? As far as motivation, you really don't get, if you're looking for like a super crazy motivation, I think they're expecting you to kind of know who Lex Luthor already is and just kind of accept that. And then by the end of the movie, there's a very long monologue, which I loved personally. I thought that was like the perfect villain monologue that explained everything and it finally like brought it to the forefront. Like, this makes sense. This is why he's doing this. Some people will be annoyed by that, I think, especially people looking for something a little deeper, but he felt like a campy bad guy Lex Luthor who is he just hates Superman. And I'm willing to accept that. I don't know about you, John, but I was willing just to accept Lex Luthor hates Superman, and I really didn't need much more than that for this story to work.
No, they more or less characterize him as just not liking that Superman exists.
Right.
And I one of the things, and I don't know if you want to talk about this yet.
Let's say it now. Let's throw in. We'll do some spoilers. I mean, at this point, I think it's okay for us to. We won't get too crazy, but just motivation wise,
The characterization of the character is kind of like a tech bro,
right?
Billionaire type of character, and I think that aspect is some part of the reason that there was a lot of pushback on the internet, is that you have this rich, powerful tech bro who is just envious of somebody who's better than him at anything, right? And that's kind of his motivation there.
My favorite line, I think, from his performance, honestly, is when he says, like, you're just jealous. I think Superman says, you're just jealous or whatever. And he's like, I'm not an idiot. Of course I'm jealous. Obviously I'm jealous. I'm like, that's perfect. But he admits it. He knows like what his flaw is, and it's what bothers him, what drives him, this like jealousy, this xenophobia for aliens, all these different things. I think that really just works for the character. And the scene when like Superman, whatever, it's kind of a spoiler, overtakes, Lex Luthor, and it's like the end of the movie. They have this really great cinematic shot of just like Superman facing Lex, and you just see like a single tear, just kind of like, he broke Lex, like he beat him, he defeated him, he's so smart and he defeated him. I like that confrontation, John. I like that kind of back and forth between two characters. It's different. We can watch Superman punch somebody all day, and like you said, he does do that in this movie, and there is some action. But that mental gymnastics between the two, I like that a lot more. I thought that was a lot more interesting, and it works, especially for these two performances that were put in.
What did you think about the other characters in the movie? So we had Superman, we had Lex Luthor, and then we had sort of the B team of heroes. What did they call themselves? The Justice Gang, who was a Green Lantern, Hawk Girl, right?
Yep.
And Mr. Terrific. So what did you think about this motley crew that was kind of rounding out our superpowered cast?
So I have to tell you, I think James Gunn does what James Gunn does best, and this will also probably circle into the conversation. And I talked about this with my wife Julie as well, where we were talking about sometimes James Gunn really loves his side characters a lot more, even I think sometimes more than his main characters in a movie. And this was one of them where I felt like he really wanted to make a Justice Gang movie. There was definitely a part of him, he's like, I cannot wait to break these characters out and do something with them. They're all perfectly cast, I gotta tell you, man. I thought everyone did a phenomenal job, especially Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner is by far is perfect, especially if you are a DC comic reader like me. He embodies Guy Gardner. The man literally voiced Hal Jordan a few times in the DC cinematic universe as far as the animations. And to see him play Guy Gardner, like, oh, I was kind of disappointed he wasn't Hal Jordan, but now seeing him as Guy Gardner, I'm like, that's perfect. I don't know if I would have changed that.
I liked his character. I liked that he was just kind of like, well, I'll do the right thing, but I'm not going to be happy about it, and I'm not going to agree with you at all along the way. So it was kind of cool to have a varied motivations from the quote unquote heroes in the movie, right? I believe it said at one point that they were kind of they had like a patron company that was like endorsing them to go out and assist the public or something, which is kind of an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Like they were employed by some company as heroes.
Do you remember Wonder Woman 83?
Yes.
Okay.
84. Yeah.
84, whatever it was. I tried to forget it, but remember Pedro Pascal's character?
Yes.
It's
his company.
That's his company. So Maxwell Lord, who's played by James Gunn's brother, go figure, he's the financial backer of the Justice Gang. Very interesting concept. Yeah, Mr. Terrific is definitely probably the standout, even more so than Guy Gardner. I don't want to pass over Hawkgirl. They didn't give me much to do with her. I really wish we got a little.
They didn't give her much to do either. No. She kind of sat in the background and would react to things, and she was not bad in the role, but they didn't really make much of a role for her.
No, and she came off annoyed. She got this like big like Hawkgirl screech thing that she did when she attacked somebody. I'm like, I don't know if Hawkgirl. I guess I could see her doing that, but I don't know. It felt kind of weird. And she has one memorable scene definitely at the end of the movie.
Yes,
I won't spoil that.
Which was very cool.
It was a very cool scene. I would have liked more from her. And again, it's one of those things that you can't. This is a Superman movie, right? But James Gunn's doing such a good job with these other characters that I want to see more of them. So that's a good thing, right? I see that as a good thing. But obviously, out of the three, though, Mr. Terrific, I think, really was the standout. Calm, cool, collected. From someone who doesn't know too much about Mr. Terrific, it was really nice to. I actually Googled him later just to get an idea for his powers and stuff like that. And great representation in my opinion. He was a fun character. It was nice to see another like stoic science bro kind of character who he had some really good comedy liners, and I think out of all the comedy in this movie, he probably delivered James Gunn's comedy the best. I would think out of everyone in this movie.
Because
I got the laughs out of him. Yes.
Yeah, he would crack. I mean, he was very dry about it, but he would react to things in a very funny way, and he was the character out of the Justice Gang that got the sort of needle drop action scene. That was probably one of the highlights of the movie. Yeah,
I mean, and again, it's one of those things you have to think about too. Did James Gunn do too much with these side characters? Then you're like, he's giving them these awesome, like, again, that scene's like gets crazy. It takes place on a beach, and he's just beating the crap out of guys, and it's like, oh my god, that's pretty awesome. It just stands out, right? And Superman, he does, not to say he doesn't have his fight scenes. I think they're pretty good, in the context of everything.
It's somewhat hard to be stylish, when your strength is strength.
That's part of the problem too there. I think the one thing you can maybe argue with this movie is the villains are kind of weak. What he has and ends up having to actually fight. He fights Ultraman, who I won't talk too much about Ultraman. We'll just say he's pretty much like equal strength and powers to Superman. So draw from that what you will. He fights Superman, and that's kind of what they do. And then the mechanic was a cool character. I wasn't sure too much. You didn't know too much about her either. And
no,
again, that was cool. She could turn her body into anything. And I do appreciate James Gunn does look out for fans. He gives you like one line of dialogue, like, she gave her body to me for science, and I perfected it, or something. Like, okay, that's all I needed to know. Keep it quick. Let's keep the pace moving in this movie.
Sure.
And
we don't need all the flashbacks showing all these people's origins. Just show me what they can do, and I'll believe you.
And then her and Ultraman fighting against Superman and Mr. Terrific in the football stadium was a really good fight scene. It was very well done. And I'll say that for the CGI in this movie, where I feel like all year, John, I think you'll agree too. I feel like we've been let down by the CGI that's been in a lot of these, especially these kind of movies in particular. This movie looked really good most of the time. If it looked a little cartoonish, I was able to kind of like forgive it, because it is it's a flashy comic book movie, but it wasn't to the point where it took me out of the movie at all. Krypto, for instance, looked like a pretty real dog half the time for me.
Yeah, seemed present in the scene, which is sometimes hard to do when it's an animal that's supposed to be kind of jumping on people and bouncing around.
Right. So overall, I will say the one thing that, again, another thing people will probably talk about with this movie is, did James Gunn kind of play it safe with the story? I think so, but I think that was a smart decision overall. I think this was a really good introduction for people back into Superman. I feel like all the fans out there, they're just really upset and like really hating on this movie. I feel like they wanted something like super groundbreaking or super crazy. Like, you have to understand, we're starting kind of from scratch again. And I think James Gunn kind of understands that. Like, I have to reestablish this character. Yeah, you've seen it before, but he kind of skipped over a lot of it, right? I think he kind of skipped over the origin, but also told us the origin and added a twist we probably should talk about. But I think it was for the best, right? Even though nothing truly exciting really happens in this movie as far as plot. Like, you're going to predict it probably right up until the very end of this movie.
Yeah.
But I don't think that was necessarily a bad thing, because I was entertained the whole way through.
And if the only other way to do it would have been another origin story, and who wants to see their fourth Superman origin story over the last 20 years or whatever? It's just like,
no, just
tell us a story.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's not how he grew up on the farm, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. And then before we get to the one big change, so James Gunn's mark is all over this movie. So if you're not a huge fan of James Gunn, or you can't tolerate James Gunn, I will say you might find some less enjoyment out of this than other people. Me personally, I love James Gunn's work for the most part. And all his superhero movies I've thoroughly enjoyed, honestly, up until this point. And this is no different for me. Are there some groan-inducing jokes? Absolutely. There's, especially from some of the side characters, some of the Daily Planet stuff that happened. It's a little groan-inducing, and it's like, whatever, like, clearly that was a James Gunn joke. Even Superman himself, especially, there's one line towards the end with him and Mr. Terrific. He delivers this one line, and I'm just like, ugh. It's like, you just know, right? It's just like, it's such a James Gunn joke, like just looking for the trailer reaction or something like that.
And it's funny how you can have all this elaborate CGI and none of that pulls you out of it and kind of makes you realize you're watching a movie, but it's just the little one-liners and I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
It's the little one-liners that you're like, yeah, I'm watching a James Gunn movie.
Right. But I think a lot of people will forget too that I think James Gunn's really kind of honed his craft as far as telling a more emotional story, and not to the point where I think you're in tears. Like, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 got a little rough for me at some points. All right?
Yeah.
And this movie kind of did it too. I'm not gonna say I'm crying. I'm not gonna say I was crying, but there were a few scenes, where it just it kind of just hits you in like a special kind of way. You can't tell me the Pa Kent scene wasn't much better than anything, like we said, from the Zack Snyder movie, that telling him don't kill him. This Pa Kent scene felt so like organic and real, just like a son talking to his dad. And it was kind of nice for once. Yeah. And I think James Gunn really knows how to nail those moments, along with an awesome soundtrack. The man knows how to pick out music, and we can't deny that. So before we wrap up, there is one thing I want to know how you feel about, and I guess we'll talk about. James Gunn, I saw this in a couple of interviews because I was curious, like, what was the purpose of this? This is a big spoiler, by the way, so if you don't want to hear this part, just fast forward, like, I don't know, 5 minutes or so. We should be wrapped up by then. James Gunn decided to put his stamp on this movie, and he said he wanted to make a change, and he changed Superman's origin story to where he was sent to Earth. Yes, the normal stuff, sent to Earth, last son of Krypton, yada, yada, yada. However, he was sent to reproduce, enslave, and take over the entire planet. That was his true origin. There's no rewriting that. That wasn't a lie. It wasn't a trick. That's the absolute reasoning why he was sent to Earth. It's part of like a broken message that's translated towards the middle of the movie, and that's kind of the whole spark for his identity crisis. I don't know about you, John. I don't know if I really cared for that change, honestly. I feel like I know why he did it, to create this conflict, but I don't know if he really needed to do that.
Well, I also think, did it feel like a great change? Not really. But I think the point of it is we are who we choose to be, not who we're born as, right?
Right.
And every aspect of your life is a choice, right? And is it a little bit of a drastic change to make that point?
That's what it is for me, I guess.
Probably, yeah.
I felt like he did it just to do it. More so. He could have found other ways to tell that same kind of story, and I think it would have worked, but I don't know. I guess it rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe that's my, jaded view as a DC enjoyer.
I'm not a huge DC enjoyer. As far as Superman, the only comics that I've read are the Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. Yeah. A short little run, which I really liked, but I'm not mega invested in the character. And so when that happened, I was like, never heard of that before, but okay.
The only thing I've heard it done before was in Dragon Ball, because that's pretty much Goku's origin story before he loses his memory. He's sent to Earth to take over the planet. I'm not saying James Gunn was reading, cheating on Akira Toriyama's homework from Dragon Ball.
I think the exchange goes both ways, you know.
I think so. But yeah, again, is it the worst thing? No, I just feel like he needed to do. I felt like maybe in his view, since the movie is so safe, right? I feel like we've been saying kind of throughout this review. I think he feel like he needed to do something to make it stand out, like his stamp on it, to make it his Superman.
Could
right?
be, you know. And the other thing I'm thinking now, as we talk about it, is just also to give another reason for people to doubt that Superman is always trying to do the right thing.
Right.
But you could have just more developed the conflict on him making decisions without talking to anyone. You could have shown more of that and it would have had the same effect.
Because and like you said, I also thought about the fact that, okay, maybe they could have done more, because a lot of the movie also has to deal with a conflict in a foreign country Superman gets involved with, and it's like, you shouldn't have done that. We've seen that before, actually, already. We've seen that in Suicide Squad, actually. He kind of did that already. So maybe, all right, you don't want to do that again, so you need to introduce another kind of like
element to it.
Kind of horseshoe that a little bit and trying to mess it up. But again, was it for me? I personally didn't like it that much, but again, I can understand why it's there. Does it derail the movie for me? Absolutely not. You know, again, it's because the character himself is so endearing. I think it was able to like move beyond that. I do think it does introduce a plot hole that maybe they'll have to address at some point. How come Supergirl never told him about it? Because Supergirl makes an appearance at the end of this movie, and she could have probably had known that. She was around. She was a little bit older when she left Krypton. You know, she probably knew what they were doing with babies, unless they didn't do that with all the babies. But I don't know.
Could be, yeah.
That seems like a plot hole. I'm just saying, James Gunn, the fan base is gonna come for you. No. I gotta tell you though, honestly, man, this was a really good movie. I think we're ready to put a score on this one.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and give Superman a 9.2 out of 10. It's actually in the upper echelons of superhero movies for me. Again, I really, really enjoyed Superman, and I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to say that based on a lot of the conversation that I saw going around about this movie. And even leading up to it, I think some of the trailers do give you a different impression than what you actually get when you watch the movie. Is this a James Gunn movie? 100% yes, it is. But it's also the best, arguably one of the best Superman movies I've ever seen. If you like Superman, you're really going to enjoy it. If you love comic books, you're going to enjoy it. Even if you don't like Superman, I think a lot of casual fans, if this is like your introduction, even a young child's introduction to Superman, I think they'll still find something there. Maybe with their like teenager though to see this one. There's definitely some suggestive scenes in there. I was like, whoa, okay, okay, we're going there. But overall, man, I had a really good time. A lot more fun than I thought I was going to have, and I loved Crypto, so that gets extra points there. So good job with that.
Yeah, I'll have to give it the Crypto bump as well. I didn't like it quite as much as you, but I did enjoy it. I think out of a 10, I would give this one like an 8.8. So still very good.
Yeah.
But you know, there were the little James Gunn isms, a director that I like, but if you rely too much on the same tools over time, you start to get more aware of it, right?
Right.
But even considering that fact, it was a lot of fun. It was great to look at, and I can't be too hard on a movie that I enjoyed to watch so much.
And that's what the hard part is. I think this was one of the harder movies I think I actually had to review, because I didn't really, only watching it once, I didn't really see too much wrong with it. A lot of what I was saying is honestly nitpicking in my opinion, because I was just having a good time watching Superman on screen. And if you're able to make me forget like the rest of the nonsense that's happening in the movie, maybe logic behind things, this isn't that kind of movie. And I hope fans can just really understand that maybe and give it a chance. You know, I know people really love Man of Steel and, you know, the Justice League Superman, and, you know, I just give this a chance. Come on, if you really like Superman, give it a chance. I think you'll have a great time. Just again, give it a chance. I'm not really sure what else to say. I'm going to be like rambling here, but what I need to know in the comments below, because I'm sure I'm going to get some kind of blowback from this. What did you guys think of Superman? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Well, what is actually wrong with it? If you do dislike it that much, I really do want to know in the comments below. Just make sure you leave a like. Don't hate on us too much. Just I want to know what you disliked, about the movie. Let's have a conversation down below. Let's try to see if we can feel each other out, see what we're feeling here, because I think it's a good movie, but I can understand the other side of the aisle too on this. I want to see those conversations. I want to see where you're coming from. But if you could also go ahead and rank the Superman movies, I'm curious about that too. Christopher Reeve's Superman will always be the best movie, the first Superman movie. I remember watching that as a little kid and just being amazed seeing Superman fly. And even at that point, not being more of a Batman fan growing up, in the '89 era of that was more my thing, but Superman was always special for some reason for me. I'm not sure why. So I'm curious to see what you guys would rank those, including the Brendan Routh one. That's always a fun one to talk about. But again, let me know in the comments below what you guys think. My name's Kevin. That guy's John. We're your Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll catch you in the next one.
If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.